So today, let's trace the path of a crisis. We're going to see how a military standoff halfway around the world can have a ripple effect that ends up right here at home, hitting the wallets of everyday people. And it all kicked off with some incredibly heated language.
The gates of hell will open for you. Whoa. Okay, that is a stark warning. It came from a top Iranian general, and it was aimed squarely at the United States. You hear something like that, you know the stakes are just about as high as they can get. So, what on earth could have prompted that kind of response?
Well, it turns out the general's threat was a direct answer to an ultimatum from then-President Donald Trump, and the whole thing centered on one of the most strategic, most important waterways on the entire planet, the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, President Trump put this message out on his Truth Social platform, and he gave Iran a very tight deadline, just 48 hours to either reopen that strait or cut a deal. And he did not mince words, threatening to destroy the country's essential infrastructure. You're talking about some serious high-pressure brinksmanship. But this time, the war of words was about to become very, very real. And this is where the situation just exploded. It escalated dramatically when a piece of American military hardware was literally knocked out of the sky, putting its crew in incredible danger. An American F-15 fighter jet was downed over Iran. All of a sudden, this wasn't about threats on social media anymore. 2 U.S. airmen were now on the ground, deep inside hostile territory. And a frantic race against the clock began to get them home safely. You know, this rescue operation was unbelievably complex and dangerous. The first pilot, thankfully, was picked up pretty quickly on Friday, but the second, a weapons systems officer, had to evade capture for more than a day in these treacherous mountains. A massive U.S. military operation swung into gear, and it all came to a head on Sunday when Navy SEAL Team 6 finally extracted the wounded airmen. In his announcement, President Trump really painted a vivid picture, didn't he? A lone American warrior hunted by enemy forces. And look, while this daring rescue was, without a doubt, a military success, the conflict itself was already sending shockwaves way beyond the battlefield. Because that military confrontation had an immediate and a powerful economic consequence. And it all comes right back to that critical waterway that was at the center of this whole dispute. So why is the Strait of Hormuz such a big deal? Well, think of it like a bottleneck. It's this narrow passage that a massive amount of the world's energy supply has to squeeze through. If you want to control the flow of oil, you control the Strait of Hormuz. Simple as that. And to put a number on it, we're talking about a fifth. That's 20% of the entire world's oil supply passing through this one little waterway. So the crucial point here is any disruption isn't just a regional problem. Oh no, it's a global one. And that is exactly what happened. With the strait pretty much closed down because of the conflict, global energy markets completely panicked. Prices shot through the roof, and economists started getting really worried that this supply shock could be enough to tip the entire world into a recession. But, these global fears don't stay global for long. Very quickly, this became a local reality. The impact of a conflict thousands of miles away started showing up in American neighborhoods, forcing families to make some incredibly tough choices. I mean, look at this. In places like Chicago, the average price for a gallon of gas soared past $4.50. And that's not just an inconvenience. For a lot of people, that's a financial crisis. It puts this immense pressure on household budgets that were already stretched pretty thin. It got so bad that a local businessman actually organized a free gas giveaway, and the lines just stretched for blocks. We heard stories of people having to choose between buying gas or buying groceries. Some folks started walking to work just to save what little money they could. As one resident, Frankie Rivera, put it, gas prices are an arm and a leg now. So all this hardship at home created this really stark contrast with the spending priorities being debated back in Washington, D.C. Because as families were struggling with these rising costs, the government was proposing a historic increase in its defense budget. The administration's budget for fiscal year 2027 asked for a staggering $1.5 trillion for the Department of Defense. That's trillion with a T. It was a 44% increase from the year before, one of the highest levels of military spending in modern U.S. history. And when you look at the budget, you see this tale of two very different priorities. On one side, you have these massive investments in new military hardware, things like the Golden Dome missile defense system, new F-47 fighter jets. But on the other side, you see these deep cuts to domestic programs. Tribal housing down 34%, a special diabetes program cut by 75%, and a community grant program that helps with local infrastructure gone, eliminated completely.
And really, that brings us to the fundamental question at the heart of all this. When you're facing a foreign conflict and economic pain at home, the choices you make about where to spend your money, that says everything about your deepest priorities. It's a debate with no easy answers, and it leaves all of us to wonder, what is the right balance?